Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into, well, one of humanity's most intriguing, maybe even mind-bending questions. Are we actually living in a simulation?
It's a huge one. Sounds like science fiction, right?
Right.
But it genuinely captivates philosophers,
Mm.
scientists, even just casual thinkers all over the world.
It really does. And this inquiry, it fundamentally challenges our deepest assumptions about reality itself. Makes you consider that everything you perceive, everything you experience, might not be quite as solid as you instinctively believe.
It really makes you rethink.
Well, everything.
Absolutely.
So our mission today is to unpack this complex, deeply intriguing, and yeah, sometimes unsettling idea of the simulation hypothesis.
We want to make it accessible, engaging, and genuinely thought-provoking for you, our listener.
Exactly. Think of it like a journey, weaving through cutting-edge science, ancient philosophy, even pop culture. We'll try to distill the key insights, make it graspable.
And by the end, hopefully, you'll have a really comprehensive grasp of its nuances, the different perspectives, even if you've never really thought about it before. That's the plan. We'll trace its surprisingly old origins, clarify what it actually means,
Look at the arguments for it, because there are some compelling ones.
and definitely confront the robust counter-arguments too. Got to look at both sides.
And finally, sort of ponder, what would it actually mean for our daily lives if this, wild idea turned out to be true?
It's a fascinating landscape. We're excited to explore it with you. We're here to guide you through the essential ideas, connect some dots, and show you why this seemingly fantastical concept has such a powerful grip.
Okay, let's dive in. So the core concept, the simulation hypothesis basically proposes that what we perceive as reality,
Everything.
yeah, every detail, the taste of your morning coffee, galaxies colliding billions of light years away, it could all be a sophisticated digital construct.
Like an incredibly advanced virtual reality, but one that encompasses absolutely everything we know.
Yeah.
No headset required.
Right. Now, when this comes up, people almost always jump to the Matrix.
Instantly.
Yeah.
And look, that film did an amazing job bringing the idea mainstream. Huge cultural impact.
No doubt.
But it's really important to distinguish the actual hypothesis from, the Hollywood version. It's not about leather trench coats and slow motion fights.
Right. Not about the aesthetic.
No. It's about the underlying code, the mathematical principles, the computation that could be governing our entire existence, the physical laws, even our conscious experiences. It's much deeper than the movie's plot.
And that's where philosopher Nick Bostrom comes in, right? The idea of a deceptive reality isn't new, obviously, but his 2003 paper, what was it called? Are you living in a computer simulation?
That's the one. It really propelled the idea into rigorous academic and scientific discussion. He didn't invent it, but he gave it this solid logical framework.
And a statistical one, that's key.
Exactly. That statistical angle made serious thinkers really pause and consider it. His work shifted the conversation from sort of whimsical speculation to a structured argument with these profound implications about our odds of being in base reality.
Base reality meaning the original non-simulated universe.
Precisely. Bostrom's contribution was kind of transformative. He laid out this set of possibilities that, when you really think them through, lead to some pretty startling conclusions.
And that framework is his famous trilemma, which is basically a choice between three possibilities, right? And his argument is that at least one of them is very, very likely true.
Extremely likely, probabilistically speaking. Yeah, a trilemma, three potentially tricky alternatives.
Okay, let's break them down. What's the first scenario?
So the first one is maybe the most straightforward in a way. It suggests that advanced civilizations simply don't reach the technological level needed to create these super intricate, consciousness-filled simulations.
Why not?
Could be insurmountable technological barriers.
Yeah.
Maybe there are fundamental limits to computing power or energy that they just can't overcome. Or maybe they tend to collapse before getting there.
Like self-destruction, climate catastrophe, a nuclear war, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Societal collapse prevents them from ever reaching that grand-scale simulation capability. So that's one possibility. They just don't make it.
Okay, scenario 2. This one suggests they could, but they don't.
Yes. Even if a civilization gets advanced enough to build these things, they might choose not to.
Why would they abstain?
Well, there could be really deep ethical concerns. Maybe they see it as a form of cosmic imprisonment or exploitation, like creating digital slaves, essentially.
That's a heavy thought.
It is.
Oh.
Or maybe they just lose interest. They find other, more meaningful pursuits for their advanced intelligence and resources. Or it could just be prohibitively expensive, Running billions of sentient simulations might be incredibly costly and resource-intensive.
Maybe just not worth the cosmic server bill.
Something like that. Or maybe they just don't see the point. It doesn't align with their ultimate goals.
All right, so that leaves the third scenario, and this is the one that really bends the mind.
This is the core of the statistical argument. It says, if advanced civilizations can create these simulations, and they do create many of them, maybe billions, trillions even, each one potentially filled with conscious beings like us.
Then the numbers game kicks in.
Exactly. Then the statistical probability overwhelmingly favors our existence being within one of those simulated realities, rather than in the one single original base reality.
Because there are potentially way more simulated realities than original ones.
Vastly more. Think about it like a cosmic lottery, as Bostrom suggests. Imagine there's one original ticket-based reality, but then an advanced civilization prints, say, 1 billion perfect replicas.
Okay.
If you pick one ticket at random from that enormous pile, what are the chances you're holding the single original?
Vanishingly small. 1 in a billion plus 1.
Precisely. The sheer volume of potential simulations, assuming they're possible and created, makes it statistically far more probable that we're in a copy, not the original. That's the statistical hammer Bostrom brought to the table.
That analogy really clarifies it. Wow. Okay, so while this feels super modern, tied to computers and AI, you mentioned its roots go way back.
Incredibly deep. Philosophers have been wrestling with the nature of reality for millennia, long before computers were even a dream.
Like Plato. His allegory of the cave, right? Around 380 BCE.
Exactly. Picture it. Prisoners chained in a cave since birth, facing a wall. Behind them, there's a fire, and people walk by carrying objects, casting shadows on the wall the prisoners see.
And for those prisoners, the shadows are reality. It's all they've ever known.
It's their entire world. And the parallel to the simulation hypothesis is profound. Plato was suggesting that our perceived reality might just be a reflection, maybe even a distorted projection, of a truer, unseen reality.
That our senses could be fundamentally deceiving us.
Precisely. That what we take for granted might just be a limited view. It shows this questioning impulse is ancient.
Okay, fast forward quite a bit to the 17th century, René Descartes.
Right. In his Meditations on First Philosophy, 1641, Descartes took radical doubt even further. He questioned everything. Famously, he wondered if an evil demon, some all-powerful deceptive being, could be fabricating his entire reality.
Making him see and feel things that weren't really there.
Exactly. It's fascinating how closely that thought experiment mirrors the modern simulation idea. Questioning perception based on a powerful external entity. It's a direct precursor.
But he found his anchor, didn't he?
He did. Cogito ergo sum. I
Yeah.
think, therefore I am. The act of doubting itself proved his mind existed. That was his foundation.
So these philosophical seeds found new life in the 20th century with science fiction. People like Philip K. Dick.
Oh, absolutely. Trailblazers like Dick were exploring simulated realities and consciousness manipulation way back, like in the Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch in '65, pre-computer era, really.
But then the game changer, The Matrix in 1999.
Monumental impact. It just exploded the concept into the global mainstream. The idea of humanity unknowingly living in this vast simulation. It captured the public imagination like nothing before.
And that red pill, blue pill choice became iconic. Confront the truth or stay ignorant.
It became cultural shorthand for questioning reality itself. It made millions really think about it.
And you could argue that The Matrix and similar stories kind of primed us, prepared the ground for Bostrom's more academic argument a few years later.
I think that's absolutely fair to say. These narratives made a seemingly outlandish philosophical idea feel relatable, even plausible, to a huge audience.
Made the intellectual jump less jarring.
Definitely. Which probably helped when prominent figures like Elon Musk or Neil deGrasse Tyson later started talking about its plausibility. The cultural context was already there.
Okay, so we've got the philosophical history, the cultural impact. Let's get into the nuts and bolts. Could such a simulation actually be built? What kind of tech would it take?
That's the crucial question, right? If it's fundamentally impossible technologically, then the whole hypothesis kind of crumbles.
So what are the requirements?
Well, we're talking about computational power on an unimaginable scale, and artificial intelligence far beyond anything we have now. Orders of magnitude more powerful.
Moore's law often comes up here. The idea that computing power doubles roughly every couple of years.
Right. Gordon Moore's observation from the 60s. It's not a physical law, but it held true for decades, driving the digital revolution.
So if you project that forward, potentially way, way forward for an advanced civilization.
The implications are staggering. Even if silicon-based Moore's law slows down for us, the general principle of accelerating technological progress suggests a civilization millions, maybe billions of years ahead. They could potentially possess computing power capable of simulating entire universes.
Down to the last atom, every photon, every thought.
That's the theoretical possibility. Think about modern video games like Red Dead Redemption 2 or Cyberpunk. They create these incredibly detailed, vast worlds.
They're stunningly realistic in many ways.
Now imagine scaling that up billions of times with fidelity so high it's indistinguishable from what we call reality. Infinite processing power, essentially.
But that brings us to the really tricky part. Consciousness. Simulating rocks and stars is one thing, but simulating sentient beings, people who think, feel, have subjective experiences.
That is arguably the biggest hurdle. We barely understand consciousness ourselves. How could a computer simulate it?
Right. It's still one of the great mysteries.
But proponents speculate that a sufficiently advanced civilization might have cracked the code of consciousness. They might understand it well enough to create AI that's truly indistinguishable from a biological mind, maybe even is conscious in some way we don't grasp.
Which leads to that unsettling idea of players versus NPCs.
Exactly. Non-player characters. Are some beings in the simulation fully conscious, with subjective experience to the players, and are others just sophisticated programs acting convincingly human but without any inner life, the NPCs?
Like advanced background characters in a game.
Kind of. And the truly profound question then becomes, for you, the listener, are you a player or are you an NPC?
And how would you even know from the inside?
You probably couldn't. That's the unsettling part.
Okay, even setting aside the consciousness problem for a second, just simulating the physics of a whole universe sounds computationally insane. Didn't someone calculate it would need more processing power than there are atoms in the universe?
Yeah. Estimates like Seth Lloyd's point to that colossal challenge. Simulating every single particle interaction across the cosmos seems impossible.
So how do simulation proponents get around that?
One clever idea is lazy rendering, or sometimes called optimization.
Like in video games, where the game only renders what the player can actually see?
Precisely. To save resources. The simulation might only need to calculate and render details when they're being actively observed or interacted with.
So the far side of the moon or the core of Jupiter doesn't need to be fully simulated with atomic precision until we actually send a probe there or observe it closely enough.
That's the idea. It makes the computational task vastly more manageable. You only compute what's necessary for the conscious observers within the simulation. The rest can remain potential or undefined until needed.
Okay, that's a neat workaround. So with that tech possibility in mind, why do smart people actually lean towards thinking we are in one? Let's dig into the arguments for the hypothesis.
Right. The compelling reasons. First, and probably the most powerful, is that statistical argument we already discussed. Bostrom's trilemma again.
If you accept that advanced civilizations can make simulations.
Which seems plausible given our own tech trajectory with VR and AI.
And that they likely would make many of them, maybe for science or entertainment or who knows what.
Then the sheer numbers dictate that simulated realities would vastly outnumber the single base reality.
So the odds are just stacked against us being in that one original universe.
Overwhelmingly stacked. It shifts from just being a possibility to a strong statistical likelihood. You're far more likely to be drawing from the giant pile of simulated tickets than holding the one unique original. Like that billion-sided die landing on base reality, very improbable.
Okay, argument 2. Our own rapid technological progress.
Yeah, look how far we've come in just a century or so. Horse-drawn carriages to Mars rovers. Pong to hyper-realistic VR.
The pace is breathtaking.
So the argument is, if our tech keeps accelerating like this, creating truly indistinguishable simulations seems like an almost inevitable future milestone for humanity itself.
And if it's inevitable for us, then a civilization millions of years older.
They've likely already passed that milestone long, long ago. Their present reality might involve routinely creating and managing simulations like ours.
Okay, third point. Those weird clues from quantum mechanics.
Right, the physics of the very small. It gets pretty bizarre down there, and some interpretations seem weirdly consistent with a simulated reality.
Like wave function collapse. Particles only deciding their state when we look at them.
Exactly. It's like the universe doesn't bother rendering a particle's definite state until an observation forces it to. That fits neatly with the lazy rendering idea for efficiency.
And the Planck scale.
Yeah.
The smallest possible units of space and time.
Some theorists speculate Those could represent the fundamental pixels or the computational grid of reality, a sign that the universe isn't infinitely smooth and continuous, but fundamentally discrete, like a digital system.
Suggestive, but not proof.
Absolutely crucial caveat. These are interpretations, fascinating parallels, not definitive evidence, but they make you think.
Fourth argument, resolving the Fermi paradox.
Ah, yes. Where is everybody? Given the age and size of the universe, shouldn't we have seen signs of other advanced alien civilizations by now? It's eerily quiet out there.
So how does the simulation hypothesis explain that silence?
Well, maybe advanced civilizations aren't focused on exploring the physical cosmos. Maybe they turn inward, dedicating their vast resources to creating and exploring incredibly rich simulated worlds instead.
So they're exploring inner space, not outer space. Interstellar travel becomes irrelevant if you can create any reality you want digitally.
Precisely. We might not see them because they're busy running simulations, maybe including ours. It's one possible answer to Fermi's question.
And finally, the endorsements. It's not just sci-fi fans thinking about this.
Right. Having figures like Elon Musk saying the odds are billions to one that we're not in a simulation, or Neil deGrasse Tyson acknowledging its profound plausibility.
It gives it a certain weight, even if it's not scientific evidence per se.
It brings significant attention and a degree of intellectual legitimacy. It shows it's being taken seriously by people at the forefront of technology and science. It's not just some fringe idea anymore.
Okay, those are some pretty thought-provoking arguments. But there are strong counter-arguments too, right? Reasons to think this is just a fascinating but ultimately flawed idea.
Absolutely. And these counter-arguments are really important to consider. One of the biggest hurdles, especially from a scientific perspective, is unfalsifiability.
Meaning you can't prove it wrong.
Exactly. A core principle of science is that a hypothesis must be testable, falsifiable. You need to be able to conceive of an experiment that could disprove it.
But if we're in a simulation designed to be perfectly convincing,
then any experiment we devise would presumably just return results consistent with the simulation's rules. It's designed to be indistinguishable from base reality.
so you can't design a test to break out or see the code because the simulation would just simulate the test results too.
Pretty much. This makes it almost impossible to definitively prove or disprove, which leads many to classify it as a philosophical thought experiment, not a testable scientific theory. Very intriguing, but maybe not science in the strict sense.
Okay, what else? Occam's razor comes up a lot.
Yes, the principle that the simplest explanation is usually the best, the one with the fewest assumptions.
And the simulation hypothesis requires a lot of assumptions.
It does. You have to assume there's an advanced civilization, assume they have this godlike computing power, assume they want to run simulations like ours, assume there's a whole hidden base reality. It adds layers and layers of complexity,
Compared to the alternative.
which is simply that the universe is what it appears to be. A fundamental physical reality governed by its own laws, no external simulators needed. That's arguably the simpler explanation.
Fewer moving parts.
Exactly, fewer assumptions.
Then there's the consciousness problem again. We talked about how hard it might be to simulate, but this is also a counter-argument.
A major one. Since we don't understand consciousness, assuming a computer can flawlessly replicate it, the subjective feeling, the qualia, self-awareness is a massive leap of faith.
Maybe consciousness isn't computable. Maybe it needs biology or some physics we haven't discovered.
That's a real possibility. If consciousness requires something non-computational, then a digital simulation might be fundamentally incapable of producing it. And if it couldn't replicate the full richness of our inner lives,
You'd think we'd notice, right? Something would feel off, sick,
Right.
hollow.
you'd expect an experiential flaw, yeah. But our reality, for most of us, feels incredibly convincing, incredibly rich. That richness itself could argue against simulation.
Okay, another angle. Why would they even bother? What are the simulator's motives?
The why bother question. Why create a simulation this complex, and frankly, often this messy and imperfect? Our world has suffering, boredom, seemingly pointless events.
If you had ultimate power, wouldn't you simulate something more efficient? Or utopian? Or at least more focused for whatever experiment you were running?
You might think so. Why simulate rush hour traffic or the common cold? It questions the elegance or purpose of the design. Unless, as you hinted before, the imperfections are the point, which opens up a whole other can of worms about the simulator's nature and ethics.
It makes the whole premise feel a bit arbitrary, maybe?
It can raise questions about the plausibility of the scenario, yes.
And finally, a very practical point. Where are the glitches?
Right. If this is a giant software program, shouldn't we see bugs, errors, Inconsistencies, like in any video game or complex software.
Characters falling through the floor, physics going haywire, objects randomly duplicating.
We've all seen weird stuff in games. But our universe seems remarkably consistent. Physical laws hold steady, gravity always works, the speed of light is constant.
Things seem stable, reliable.
This incredible consistency, this lack of obvious, undeniable glitches, is often cited as strong evidence that it's a fundamental physical reality, not a potentially boogie program.
Unless the glitches are really subtle. Or maybe things we think are fundamental laws or quantum weirdness are actually the glitches.
That's the counter-argument.
Huh?
Maybe the weirdness is the system showing its seams, but finding an undisputed bug remains elusive.
Okay, let's shift gears. Let's just assume for a minute. What if we are in a simulation? What does that actually mean for us living our lives?
This is where it gets deeply philosophical, even existential. The first big question is usually about free will.
Are my choices my own? Or am I just following a script? Running code?
Are we puppets on digital strings? It raises a spectrum of possibilities. Maybe everything is predetermined by the simulator's code.
No free will at all.
Or maybe it's more like a sophisticated sandbox game. We have freedom within the rules, within the programmed boundaries, like guardrails on a highway.
You can choose where to drive on the road, but you can't just drive off into the void because the simulation doesn't allow it.
Something like that. And this immediately throws morality and responsibility into question. If my actions are just code executing, am I truly responsible for them? Or is agency just an illusion, a user interface trick?
Wow, that's a lot. Okay, what about the purpose of the simulation? If someone built this, why?
People have proposed several possibilities, often mirroring why we might create simulations. One is simply entertainment.
Or a cosmic reality show for some advanced audience out there.
Our lives, our dramas, our joys, our conflicts, all playing out for their amusement. Cosmic voyeurs watching Universe Season 7 billion.
Cheery thought. What else?
Scientific experimentation. The simulation could be a vast laboratory. Maybe they're studying sociology, psychology, physics.
Running different scenarios. What if history went this way instead of that way?
Exactly. Testing fundamental laws, exploring evolutionary pathways, maybe even trying to solve problems they face in their own base reality by simulating potential outcomes here.
Then there's Bostrom's idea, ancestral simulation.
Right. Maybe future humans, or post-humans, are simulating their ancestors, us, to understand their own history and origins, like the ultimate historical reenactment.
Running countless variations of the past to see how things might have turned out.
Could be. And another idea, a training ground. Maybe this reality is a kind of cosmic boot camp.
Preparing us for something else, a higher reality.
Possibly. Or maybe it's a place to train advanced AIs before deploying them in the base reality, testing them out in a complex, realistic environment.
Okay, those are some wild possibilities, but let's bring it right down to earth. If we found out tomorrow, definitively, yep, it's a simulation, would it actually change how you feel day to day? Would your coffee taste different? Would love feel less real?
That's the grounding question, isn't it? And for most people, the gut feeling is probably not.
Because the experience feels real. The joy, the pain, the connection, the loss. It's all happening to us within this framework.
Exactly. Our subjective experience, the feeling of love, the sting of grief, the warmth of friendship, the taste of food, it remains profoundly real to us, regardless of whether the ultimate substrate is atoms or code.
So if an experience feels real, for all practical purposes, it kind of is real, at least to the experiencer.
Many philosophers would argue exactly that. The reality of the experience itself isn't negated just because the underlying structure might be different than we assumed.
So how should we live then with this possibility hanging out there?
Well, there are broadly two philosophical stances. One is basically maintain the status quo. Since our experiences are real to us, live life with the same commitment, focus, love, and striving as if this is base reality. The significance of our choices, our relationships, our actions doesn't diminish.
Just keep calm and carry on simulating.
Pretty much. The other stance, though, sees the hypothesis as a potential catalyst for deeper introspection. It could inspire us to question everything more deeply, seek profound truths, engage with reality more consciously. Maybe look for the rules, the patterns, the potential code. Some might even try to, communicate with the programmers.
Like trying to send a message out of the simulation.
It could spur a kind of grand collective quest for ultimate truth, an existential awakening prompted by the possibility of a deeper reality.
It's definitely seeped into pop culture, that's for sure. It's not just philosophers debating this anymore.
Oh, absolutely. It's moved way beyond niche debate. It's firmly embedded in our collective imagination now.
And these cultural examples, they do more than just entertain. They shape how people perceive the idea, make these abstract concepts feel more tangible.
Definitely. The Matrix is the obvious giant, the entry point for millions. That red pill, blue pill choice is just universal shorthand now.
Can't escape it. What else? Westworld?
Great example. That series dives so deep into the ethical and existential stuff. Simulated beings gaining consciousness, free will, creator responsibility. Really makes you think about the lines blurring.
Yeah, what happens when the creations wake up? And Ready Player One. More about VR escape, maybe.
Yeah, slightly different angle, but still relevant. Humanity escaping a grim reality into this huge virtual universe, the Oasis. It raises questions about where we draw the line, the pull of digital escape, what happens when the simulation seems better than reality.
And even comedies tackle it, right? Like Rick and Morty.
Ah, yes. They have fun with nested simulations within simulations, like that M. Night Shyamalan's episode.
Yep.
It humorously explores just how confusing it could get, how hard it might be to ever know if you've reached the bottom layer.
If there even is a bottom layer.
Exactly. These shows and movies illustrate how the idea has permeated culture, letting people grapple with these big questions in an engaging way, which then feeds back into the wider discussion.
Okay, the big question remains, though. Could we ever actually prove it? Is there a test, some way to find out for sure?
Ah, the elusive proof. It's incredibly difficult, maybe impossible, but people have theorized about potential methods. We're talking about probing the very edges of reality here.
Like looking for those glitches we mentioned earlier.
Right. Actively searching for subtle bugs,
Mm.
inconsistencies, errors in the code. Some physicists suggest looking for tiny variations in fundamental constants, or violations of physical laws under extreme conditions.
Cosmic glitches.
Yeah, like if energy conservation wasn't perfectly conserved, or information could truly disappear, that might hint at computational limits. But again,
The universe seems remarkably consistent so far. No obvious error messages popping up.
exactly. Another theoretical path is trying to check the code itself, looking for digital patterns.
Like seeing the pixels.
Metaphorically, yes. Could the Planck length, the smallest unit of space, be the pixel size of reality? Is Planck time the refresh rate? Does the universe have a finite resolution?
It's a wild thought.
Extremely speculative, maybe detecting some kind of underlying computational noise. But our tech is nowhere near capable of probing that scale. It's deep into theoretical physics.
Okay, here's a different angle. What if we create a simulation?
The meta approach. If humanity eventually builds its own complex simulations, complete with conscious beings inside who don't know they're simulated,
Wouldn't that make it seem much more likely that we are also in one?
it would significantly boost the statistical argument, yeah. It's like a cosmic domino effect. If we can do it, it suggests it's something advanced civilizations do.
And we're making progress with AI, VR, brain-computer interfaces. Maybe those are the baby steps.
They could be seen that way. If we achieve it, it lends powerful support to Bostrom's argument. It suggests a common path for intelligence.
But even then, we hit that philosophical wall again, don't we?
The ultimate problem. Even if we found what looks like slam dunk evidence, a clear glitch, a repeating pattern in the cosmos.
How could we be sure that wasn't just part of the simulation too? Programmed in to fool us or test us?
Exactly. It's like trying to prove you're dreaming while still inside the dream. Any evidence you find within the dream could just be another element of the dream.
You can't step outside the system to verify it.
That inherent circularity, that deep epistemological challenge, is why it often remains in philosophy and speculation. We might be fundamentally unable to know for sure from the inside.
So after all this back and forth, why the enduring fascination? Why are we so obsessed with this idea?
I think it taps into something really fundamental, that deep, timeless human urge to understand the nature of our existence. It's the latest version of the oldest questions. What is real? Is this all there is?
It frames those huge metaphysical questions in a modern technological context we can kind of grasp.
Exactly. And there's definitely an undercurrent of maybe fear. The fear of being controlled, of not having real agency, wondering if some unseen entity is pulling the strings.
The cosmic puppet master idea, it's unsettling.
It is. But conversely, there can be a strange kind of optimism too. If this reality is simulated, it implies there's a base reality that's even more profound, more complex, maybe even more incredible.
A bigger reality out there.
Yeah, suggesting higher levels of existence, which can be quite an inspiring thought, oddly enough.
And there's that technological mirroring you mentioned. as we get better at making virtual worlds.
It just makes us wonder, naturally, if someone else already did it to us. Our own progress reflects back on our view of the universe.
Our tech gives us the language to ask the question in a new way.
It's a powerful feedback loop. We conceive of simulations because of our tech, and that leads us to question reality using that same tech lens.
So let's ground it one last time. Even if we are in a simulation, our experiences feel real. The joy, the pain, the love, the connections, that stuff is tangible to us right here, right now.
Absolutely crucial point. That subjective reality, the felt experience of living, remains profoundly real, regardless of the ultimate substrate. Coffee still tastes like coffee. Love still feels like love.
So maybe the hypothesis isn't a threat, but more like an invitation.
I like that framing. An invitation to think critically, question assumptions, maybe seek deeper truths, and ultimately maybe to appreciate the reality we do inhabit, whatever its true nature.
Encourages a more mindful way of being, perhaps.
Could be. And here's a final thought to leave you with. If we are in a simulation, maybe the goal should be to make it the best simulation possible.
How do you mean?
Be kind, explore, create, learn, pursue dreams. Live well within the framework we have. Maybe the simulators are watching, Maybe we get points for being good sims. Or maybe our positive actions somehow contribute to their purpose. It's a twist on finding meaning within the system.
Earn a cosmic thumbs up. I like it. Look, the simulation hypothesis is definitely thrilling, terrifying, humbling, all at once.
It challenges everything we think we know.
Yeah.
A real testament to human curiosity.
Absolutely. Whether you find it plausible or just a fascinating thought experiment, it's a powerful reminder of the huge mysteries still out there.
And our endless capacity to ask the big questions.
It certainly keeps you thinking. So what do you think? Are we living in a simulation, or is it just a wild, fascinating idea spun by philosophers, scientists, and maybe too much sci-fi? When whatever you're working towards, maybe a big career jump or a personal project that once really lit you up, or maybe it's just getting through a really tough day and suddenly it just feels impossible and that little voice inside starts whispering, just stop.
We've all been there, haven't we?
Absolutely, yeah. That moment when you're get up and go, just gets up and goes. It's incredibly common.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. Look, this isn't about those sort of generic pep talks. It's about really dissecting the actual mechanics of why that motivation dips sometimes. We've gone through the material you shared with us, really distilled the insights, and now we want to equip you with, like, a concrete toolkit.
That's right. Our mission here is to help you reignite that spark when it fades. Think of motivation less like this, perpetual bonfire, and more like a flickering flame. Sometimes it blazes, sure, but other times it's just embers. And our goal in this deep dive is really to show you how to fan those embers back into a real fire when you need it most. Okay, so let's unpack that. Why does this happen? Why does that initial surge of energy often just fade away?
Well, one of the key things your sources highlight is fascinating. It's the dopamine dip. See, when we start something new, there's this immediate rush of dopamine.
The brain's reward chemical.
Exactly. It creates that initial buzz, that kind of optimistic excitement.
Yeah.
You feel it right when you start a new project or tackle a fresh challenge.
That initial thrill. Yeah, it's potent, but it doesn't last, does it? Why not?
Precisely. Like any intense chemical high, that dopamine surge just isn't sustainable long term. Your brain can't constantly run on that level of novelty and excitement. So as the newness kind of wears off, or as soon as you hit the first inevitable snag or challenge, that chemical high naturally dips. And suddenly what felt exciting and effortless now requires real, conscious, sustained effort. It becomes, work.
And it's often those setbacks that hit really hard, isn't it? A rejection, maybe a perceived failure, or just feeling like you're spinning your wheels, making no progress. The material brought up this really powerful concept, learned helplessness. What's the actual impact of that?
Learned helplessness isn't just some fancy psychological term. It's a profound demotivator. It really is. If you experience repeated failures or even just a consistent lack of reward for the effort you're putting in, your brain starts to make this dangerous connection. My actions don't matter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it leads to the sense of futility, making you question why even bother trying. It's a very, very powerful mental trap to fall into.
And beyond those big sort of project-specific challenges, there are also just the everyday drains on our energy, right?
Absolutely. Things like deadlines always looming, maybe money worries, or even just not having a strong support system in your immediate circle. These aren't just minor annoyances. They can really amplify that underlying urge to just quit. It's actually incredible what people manage to achieve, even with these constant pressures bearing down. But here's the really crucial insight your sources reveal. Motivation isn't some mysterious random emotion that just happens to us. It's actually more like a muscle.
A muscle. Okay, that's an interesting way to reframe it. How does thinking of it that way change our approach?
Well, it changes pretty much everything. If motivation is a muscle, it means it can be developed, it can be strengthened, it can even be rehabilitated after, a period of inactivity or burnout. It's not about waiting around for inspiration to magically strike. It's about understanding what depletes it and what fuels it, and then consistently putting in the reps, so to speak, to keep it strong. It implies effort, yes, but also consistency and having a deliberate strategy.
Okay, so we understand a bit more about why we feel demotivated. Now, for the critical part, how do we actively start climbing back up that hill? What's actually in this motivation toolkit you mentioned?
All right, the first strategy, drawn straight from the insights you shared, is all about re-examining and reframing your why.
Your why, right? That's like your anchor, your original purpose for starting. When things get tough, it's what keeps you tethered to the ultimate goal. But why isn't a vague why enough? What's the real power in getting specific about it?
The power lies in making it tangible and, more importantly, emotionally resonant. Your material gave a fantastic example of this. Instead of a really general goal like, I want to lose weight, which is fine, but lacks real punch.
Hmm.
Reframe it to something like, I want to lose weight so I can play with my kids in the park without getting winded.
Mm-hmm.
See how that second one connects directly to your values, to a specific emotional outcome.
Yeah, that hits differently. It's personal.
Exactly. And research consistently shows that having a clear, emotionally charged purpose significantly boosts your resilience when challenges inevitably arise.
Okay, so the actionable step here is actually write down your why, like in a vivid detail. And then what? Stick it somewhere visible.
Precisely. Post it on your bathroom mirror, make it your phone's screensaver, put it somewhere you'll see it every single day. And it's not necessarily static either. As you grow and your life evolves, your why can and probably should evolve with it. The core idea is just maintaining that conscious, powerful connection to your purpose.
Okay, so we've got our deeply personal why locked in, but sometimes the goal itself just feels huge, overwhelming, doesn't it? That can lead straight to paralysis. What's the next tool to combat that feeling?
This brings us to the second crucial strategy, breaking down those big, often daunting goals into micro goals. Feeling overwhelmed is an absolute motivation killer.
It really is. You just stare at the mountain and you don't even know where to take the first step. It's like being asked to write a whole novel and all you see is that terrifying blank page.
Exactly that. The solution is to take that massive objective and dissect it into tiny, actionable pieces, really small ones. For example, instead of the overwhelming write a book, the micro goal can simply be write 200 words today. That's it.
Okay.
Or instead of run a marathon, it becomes run 1 mile without stopping.
Those feel doable,
Yeah.
manageable, and I guess each one you complete must give you a little lift, right?
They absolutely do. Each micro goal is a tangible, achievable win. And every single small win delivers a fresh little hit of dopamine, providing that crucial positive reinforcement. Your material really emphasizes acknowledging and even celebrating these small victories. Don't just brush them off. Our brains respond really well to that immediate positive feedback, and those small wins, cumulatively, they become truly significant. They build momentum.
They really do add up. That cumulative effect is powerful.
Okay.
So we've got our compelling why, and we're breaking things down into bite-sized pieces. What's next in the toolkit?
Well, let's talk about embracing the power of routine. Because relying solely on feeling motivated is about as dependable as, I don't know, predicting the weather a month out. Your mood, your energy levels, they fluctuate wildly day to day, even hour to hour.
Right. So if we only act when we feel motivated, we're basically setting ourselves up for constant stops and starts. We need a more reliable engine to keep us going.
We definitely do. And the solution is to establish consistent habits. Habits provide structure that's independent of how you're feeling in the moment. The actionable step here is actually pretty simple. Pick one consistent action, just one that supports your goal, and commit to doing it regularly. Maybe it's 5 minutes of language practice every morning, or 10 minutes of stretching before bed, something small and sustainable.
Small, consistent actions. Yeah, I can see how 5 minutes a day might not feel like a huge deal at the time, but over a year?
Wow. It compounds into remarkable progress. James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, which was referenced in your material, highlights this powerfully. Consistency, even in really small doses, almost always trumps sporadic bursts of intense effort. And your sources also mention a technique called habit stacking, which is quite clever.
Habit stacking. What's that?
It's linking a new habit you want to build onto an existing one you already do without thinking. For example, right after I brush my teeth in the morning, I will do my 5 minutes of language practice.
Ah, okay. So it sort of piggybacks on something that's already automatic, makes it easier to remember and integrate. That's smart. So even when your motivation dips, which it will, your routine becomes like this current that just carries you forward anyway.
Exactly, it automates progress.
Okay, we've covered purpose, breaking things down, building habits, but sometimes that urge to quit isn't really about a lack of drive, is it? Sometimes it feels like it's coming from a deeper, more insidious place. The fear of failure? It almost feels protective in a weird way.
It does, doesn't it? It's that anxiety of putting in all that effort, all that time, only to fall short. That little voice whispering, what if you try your absolute hardest and you're still not good enough? Ugh. It could be completely paralyzing. Honestly, the fear of failure often makes us not even start in the first place.
Yeah, it's a way of avoiding that potential disappointment, that sting. But the material you shared really underlines a fundamental truth here. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's actually an integral part of it. It's a stepping stone.
Precisely. Think about, J.K. Rowling's huge stack of rejections before Harry Potter finally got picked up, or Thomas Edison's thousands and thousands of attempts before he perfected the light bulb. Failure is feedback. That's the key shift. It's just information. It's a way to learn, to adjust, to iterate, to grow. It's not some final judgment on your inherent worth or capability. Your sources really encourage reframing setbacks as data points, things you can analyze objectively.
Okay, so if a presentation didn't land well, it's not I'm a terrible presenter, but more like, okay, what feedback did I get? What parts didn't connect? What can I adjust for next time? Viewing failure as a teacher rather than a judge really strips it of its power, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And often, if you really think about it, the greatest regret isn't the failure itself. It's the missed opportunity. It's the what if I had just kept going? The wondering.
Yeah, the fear of not even trying can actually be far greater in the long run than the fear of failing. Okay, that brings us nicely to our fifth strategy, the profound importance of who you surround yourself with, your circle.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Your people. We are fundamentally social creatures, and our environment shapes us much more than we often realize. If you're constantly surrounded by negativity or cynicism or just plain discouragement, it's like trying to run through quicksand. Your motivation will drain away. It's almost inevitable.
And conversely, being around enthusiastic, genuinely supportive people can really lift you up, give you energy. And this isn't just like anecdotal feel-good stuff, is it?
Not at all. Your sources actually reference the Framingham Heart Study, which is fascinating. It demonstrated that even abstract concepts like happiness and, yes, even motivation can literally spread through social networks, like a positive contagion.
Wow, really?
Yeah, so the actionable step here is pretty straightforward, but important. Take an honest look at your social circle. Who genuinely encourages you? Who celebrates your progress, even the small wins? And who, maybe unintentionally, tends to drain your energy or sow doubt?
So consciously prioritize spending time with those people who truly fuel your fire. And what about finding new connections, finding your tribe, as they say?
Absolutely crucial. Seek out people who are working towards similar goals. This could be through online forums, local clubs, workshops, meetups, whatever works for you. It combats that feeling of isolation, which can be a real motivation killer, and provides camaraderie, shared wisdom, maybe some accountability, and just a collective push when your individual resolve might be wavering.
Okay, so that's managing our external circle. But what about the most critical voice of all? The one that's constantly talking inside our own head. That often feels like the biggest barrier, doesn't it? The inner critic.
It really can be.
Yeah.
The inner critic can be absolutely relentless, a constant source of negativity, especially when you're already feeling a bit demotivated. It just gets louder than sowing seeds of doubt, whispering, just give up, it's not worth it.
Mm.
So the big question is, how do we tame that voice?
Exactly. How do we quiet down that relentless negativity loop?
Well, the first step, maybe counterintuitively, is just awareness. Simply noticing the thoughts without judgment. Don't try to suppress them or fight them directly. That often backfires and makes them stronger. Instead, just try to observe them, almost like clouds passing in the sky. Acknowledge their presence. Ah, there's that critical thought again. Then here's the crucial part. Consciously challenge them. If your inner critic pipes up with, you're definitely going to fail at this.
You push back.
Yes. Actively reframe it with something more constructive and realistic.
Okay, so something like, I've learned from past challenges, or maybe I might make mistakes, but I can improve.
Precisely. You are consciously taking control of the internal narrative. You're not letting the critic run the show unchallenged. And your material also highlights a really fascinating technique here, using third-person self-talk.
Third person, how does that work?
Instead of saying to yourself, I can do this, try saying, using your own name, or just you, something like, you've got this, or your name, you can handle this.
Huh, you've got this. That feels different. Kind of like talking to a friend. What's the psychological impact there?
Well, research by psychologist Ethan Cross suggests it creates a bit of psychological distance. It allows you to address yourself from a slightly more objective, less emotionally entangled perspective. This can actually reduce stress and significantly boost your resolve. It's almost like giving yourself the kind of encouragement and solid advice you might get from a trusted friend or mentor, but it's coming from within you.
That's a powerful distinction. Really interesting. And speaking of managing that inner state, sometimes the most profound advice from your material about resisting that overwhelming urge to quit is surprisingly simple. It boils down to rest, don't quit.
Oh, this is so critical.
Yes.
Often that profound urge to just throw in the towel isn't actually a sign of weakness or that the goal is wrong. More often than not, it's simply your body and mind screaming out for a break. Rest is not a luxury you earn. It's a strategic necessity for sustained effort. Pushing yourself relentlessly when you're already burnt out is deeply, deeply counterproductive.
Right, it just digs the hole deeper. So it's about being proactive, scheduling breaks before you hit that wall of complete depletion.
Exactly. Use techniques like, say, the Pomodoro method, working in focused bursts, maybe 25 minutes,
Yeah.
followed by short mandatory breaks. Even just stepping away from your workspace for 5 minutes to stretch, get some water, or clear your head can make a significant difference in maintaining energy and focus. And if you're feeling that deeper level of exhaustion, you really need to truly disconnect. Take a full day off. Take a weekend if you can. Step away completely. You'll often find that returning with a fresh perspective is far more productive in the long run than just grinding through misery.
Rest as a strategy, not a failure. I like that. And okay, once we're feeling maybe a bit refreshed, your sources also talk quite a bit about the power of visualization, not just visualizing the end goal, the success, but the entire journey. How does that truly impact motivation?
Yeah, visualization is far more than just, wishful thinking or daydreaming. It actually creates a real psychological impact. When done right, visualization makes your goals feel more tangible, more real, and ultimately more attainable. There's research, like studies published in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology, that demonstrates how vividly imagining a successful outcome directly enhances your motivation and strengthens your belief in your own ability to achieve it.
So it's about really picturing myself having achieved the goal, like feeling the feelings, seeing the sights, hearing the sounds associated with that success.
Yes, absolutely do that. But crucially, don't only visualize the outcome. Also visualize the journey itself. Mentally rehearse the steps you'll need to take. Imagine yourself overcoming potential obstacles. Picture yourself getting those small wins along the way that we talked about earlier. This makes the entire path feel less abstract, less intimidating, and much more firmly within your control. It builds confidence in the process, not just the result.
Okay, that makes sense. Visualizing the process too. So we're seeing the journey and the destination in our mind's eye. What about tracking our actual progress? How does having that tangible evidence impact our motivation levels?
Tracking progress is incredibly effective, maybe deceptively so, because it directly combats that common sinking feeling of I'm working so hard but I'm not getting anywhere.
It's so easy to lose sight of the progress you have made unless you're actively measuring it somehow.
Right. So whether you use a journal or maybe a spreadsheet or even just a simple visual chart on the wall, the act of tracking itself provides concrete evidence of your efforts.
Precisely. Seeing those numbers tick up, or that to-do list get shorter, or that graph moving in the right direction provides a really powerful psychological boost. It's a tangible reminder that you are moving forward, even if it feels slow sometimes. It also naturally builds accountability to yourself, and it makes it far harder psychologically to just quit when you can clearly see how far you've already come. Look at the investment. Yeah, you see the proof. Okay, so all these strategies we've discussed are really about pushing forward, about perseverance, about keeping going. But what about when that urge to quit isn't actually about fear or burnout or lack of clarity, but maybe something else entirely? What if the goal itself is the problem?
That leads us perfectly to our 10th and final strategy from the toolkit, accepting that sometimes it's okay to pivot. It's necessary even. Sometimes that persistent urge to quit isn't a sign of weakness at all, but actually a valid signal that the goal itself is no longer the right fit for you.
Because life changes, right? Our priorities
Right.
evolve. What felt incredibly important a year ago might not align with who you are or what you want now.
Exactly. Your values shift, your desires change, circumstances change. Holding on to a goal that no longer genuinely resonates with you can be profoundly demotivating in itself. So letting go of that goal or consciously changing direction, that isn't failure. Not at all. It's actually an act of profound self-awareness. It takes courage. It shows strength. It's a fundamental part of growth.
So it's reframing it again. It's not giving up. It's having the wisdom to recognize when something isn't serving you anymore, and then having the courage to redirect your precious energy elsewhere, like maybe leaving a job that consistently makes you unhappy.
Or moving on from a past passion that honestly no longer sparks any joy. These kinds of decisions are actually acts of self-respect. You deserve to pursue things that feel meaningful and fulfilling now.
Wow. What a comprehensive motivation toolkit we've unpacked here. From reconnecting with your deepest why to breaking down daunting goals, building those powerful routines, reframing setbacks as feedback, curating your environment, mastering that inner critic, using rest strategically, visualizing the process, tracking your journey, and finally, knowing when it's wise to pivot.
The core message running through all of this is really clear, I think. Motivation isn't some fixed, innate trait that you either possess or you lack. It's not genetic, it's a dynamic skill set. It's a collection of concrete strategies that literally anyone can learn, develop, and deploy when they need them.
So, for you listening, the next time that inner whisper of doubt or that urge to quit surfaces, remember this conversation. You don't have to try and implement all 10 of these strategies at once. That would be overwhelming in itself. Just pick one. Pick the one strategy that resonates most deeply with you in that specific moment.
And just give it a genuine try, see what happens. Often, just taking that very first small step forward is enough to reignite a little bit of that spark. Because, and this is key, motivation often follows action. You don't have to wait until you feel motivated to start doing something. Just start.
Start. And the motivation will often begin to build as a result. And think about the profound benefits beyond just achieving that one goal of pushing through those moments of doubt. You're building resilience, you're cultivating genuine grit, and you're developing this deep, unwavering confidence in your own capability to achieve things, to overcome challenges.
Yeah. Consider the people you admire, maybe those who've achieved great things you aspire to. Their journeys weren't paved with constant, effortless inspiration. Far from it. They faced setbacks. They felt doubts. They probably wanted to quit sometimes, just like you do. The only real difference between them and you is often just time and persistence. They kept going. So the final question for you is really, as you start to consciously apply these strategies, what new insights will you gain about your own incredible capabilities? Keep going. You really have got this.